People just don't understand me.
Well, maybe if you talked a little slower, a little softer.
That's not what I meant. I mean, people don't know who I really am.
Hello and welcome to episode 434 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now, today's guest is absolutely huge. For me personally, and you'll hear it on the episode when I tell him, I've wanted this guest since I ever started podcasting. Really because of nostalgia reasons and growing up with my dad being absolutely obsessed with the Police Academy franchise. So yes, you've probably guessed it. Today's guest is the absolute genius, Bobcat Goldthwait. This for me blows my mind. I can't actually believe the interview's happened. It's someone that I've always dreamed of having on. I can share some behind the scene things here. It's just someone that I just didn't think would actually ever happen. I dreamed of it. I hoped for it. I tried. And when I got the news that it was actually happening, I didn't want to tell anyone in case it kind of fell through. But then I was at my dad's house and we got to sit down and talk, and I was telling him just how the podcast is going, and I couldn't hold back. I was like, Dad, remember when we used to watch Zed on Police Academy? Well, Zed's coming on Mark and Me, and his face lit up. I really can't wait to share this interview with you all in a couple of minutes' time. But you know what I'm going to do now? As always, I always use the intro for every episode of Mark and Me to quickly touch base and talk about my last guest. I can't really not talk about this because as it stands right now, as I'm sitting here recording this intro, my guest, Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, is my most downloaded episode ever of Mark and Me. So thank you to all the amazing fans that shared it. Thanks to Jerry that shared it. My God, the numbers went insane the moment he did. All of the Alice in Chains fans that have been so supportive, the positive feedbacks and comments, I've read them all. It's been so amazing, and I want to thank each and every one of you for making it the most successful episode of Mark and Me in my podcast history. So it's going to take some beating, but hey, we're here today. We've got Bobcat Goldthwait on the podcast. We get to talk all about his career. We get to talk about Mac and Me. That's a bit of a spoiler. And we also get to talk all about the re-release of his amazing film, God Bless America, which is actually right now streaming on the Studio Canal channel, which is Studio Canal Presents. And you can watch that on Prime, Apple TV, and all the other providers out there. But hey, I don't want to spoil anything else. I want you to hear the interview. So this is going to feel really good saying this. Here's me and Bobcat talking all things film. Hey Bobcat, how's it going?
Good. I love the Mac and Me logo.
Oh, not many people get it straight away, and then I show them, and then they suddenly click and go, "Oh, Mark and Me, Mac and Me."
Yeah, I was so bummed out when Paul Rudd over here started showing clips of that on the Conan O'Brien show, because I felt like that was my private joke for a while, you know.
I know, it was like this really good kept secret that no one knew about, like this magic film, and then suddenly everyone was like laughing at the clip of the guy in the wheelchair, and I was like, oh, now it's like everyone's got my kind of secret little like stash.
Well, I dated a woman that was in the dance scene in the McDonald's.
That's a claim to fame.
Yeah, well, she went on to do other acting gigs, but we were talking about, it may have been one of her first jobs. And I was like, "You're in Mac and Me?" Like that was.
Honestly, I'd want to marry that person instantly. I'm like, tell me what it was like on set. Was it really a puppet? Like, how cool was that?
It's so good. I remember. Well, we could talk about Mac and Me all day. All right.
We can do a whole hour just on Mac and Me and then get in trouble from the studio why we didn't promote anything else.
But yeah.
What I do, Bobcat, welcome, of course, to the Mark and Me podcast. With every guest that come on, and I've done this for nearly 9 years now, is I always like to go back to the early days, and I will get to obviously talk about certain films and stuff, but I'm really intrigued about your childhood and that first film that maybe was given to you by a friend or a family member, or you, I don't know, maybe you watched it at home with the family, that you just fell in love with cinema, that first one that kind of got your attention?
Yeah, that was like, well, there is movies that spoke to me, like
Yeah.
I don't know what the name of it really was, but when it played the States, it was Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Oh, wow.
And I really, that one, I came home and I told my mother the whole plot and acted Godzilla, and yeah, so that one. But the other thing about my mom's influence is my mother would watch during the day. She always had the movie matinee on, so there was all these noir films playing, and don't know what I was watching, but they were very adult movies, and I'd watch those all day. But the movies where you go, wow, there's something going on here. How do you tell stories? It'd be cliche, but I definitely knew that the second the second time of watching It's a Wonderful Life, realizing that it solicited the same emotions from me, and I was like, well, how do you do that? How do that's like that's when I became aware of a filmmaker. The movie that I think that I'm really not giving you a good answer, but now I just remembered the movie that definitely made me want to make movies would be Young Frankenstein. That was like
Wow.
that was the one where I watched it, and I had never done this. Uh, I bought another ticket and walked back into the theater and watched it twice in one row in one sitting, because it was just like, and I feel like that does influence a lot of the movies I make, because there's, that's two genres. It's a comedy, obviously, but he's pretty faithful to the James Whale, Frankenstein. So, yeah, that's kind of probably why I made a noir alcoholic clown film, and a rom-com with a little bestiality. It's always different things getting smashed together.
The first time I saw that movie, I couldn't quite believe what was going on. Like, it was just like nothing else I'd ever seen, because I'd not seen any Mel Brooks films until that point. So growing up, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is black and white. And then the
Yeah.
eyes and everything, I was just like, this is harrowing, but it's also laugh out loud funny. I couldn't understand what it was trying to be, but it didn't need to be anything. It was just entertaining me.
Yeah, and when they're not together is really sad.
Yeah.
Interesting, like how many Gene Wilder movies were pivotal, like his Willy Wonka and the producers. So so I grew up with Tom Kenny. Tom Kenny's the voice of SpongeBob. We've been friends since we were 6 years old. Tom Kenny had a picture of Mel Blanc in his locker, the guy who did all the
Yeah.
voice. And I had a picture of Mel Brooks in mine, because I liked Mel Brooks, because he would come on a talk show and he'd be hilarious. And I had like his albums that he did with Carl Reiner. But I also knew he was the same guy that wrote The Producers. I know he was the same guy that wrote and directed Young Frankenstein. So I knew that there was something else going on, and I definitely he's definitely still a big hero of mine.
So when you're watching this as a young kid, are you saying to yourself at that point, I want to be an actor as well, or is that a bit
Yeah.
further in the distance? I'm trying to work out a time scale of when you're seeing these films and thinking to yourself, I could do this.
When I was a boy and I'd watch Abbott and Costello, I wanted to be an actor.
Amazing.
When I saw Lou Costello, I was like, oh, I could do that. But it was funny. I took those very serious. Like, it was watching them as if they were a very high art or something. And then when I was 9, I was home from school and George Carlin was on a
Oh,
talk show.
wow.
And I told my mother, what does he do? I asked her, I go, what does he do for a living? And she goes, that's what he does for a living. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I'm gonna do for a living.
Was your mum terrified that you thought you could go down that, or was she like, I could support you, I believe you can do this? Because for everyone out there, I say it a lot, but when I've interviewed actors, their parents were terrified the moment their son turned around and said, like, I'm not going to get a real job. I'm going to go and try and make it in this
Yeah.
incredibly difficult industry.
Now, my mother, when I was a kid, told me I could be anything, and she never she didn't discourage me from this life, but my father certainly did. My father, he just thought I was wasting my time and stuff.
Was that a battle, or were you just that? Does that kind of make you
No,
more
because
determined?
no, I moved out when I was 18 to go
Yeah.
pursue comedy, and then poor Tom Kenny's parents, because he a lot of colleges and universities were trying to get him to attend, because his grades were so good. Not me, but his grades. And I convinced him, I go, no, we're going to be comedians, come on, Pinocchio, run away to the circus, and it took them about 10 years before they forgave me.
What's crazy, and I truly mean this, I've done this podcast for almost 9 years and I've had over 450 guests. I launched with Kevin Smith, I've had Anthony Hopkins, Mads Mikkelsen, all different
Um,
people. And truly, it's taken till now. When I grew up, if you asked me the question, it was Police Academy. So me and my dad would
wow.
watch Police Academy films, and it's funny because I've never been able to interview myself. But with the films I watched when I was a kid, my dad would always watch the Rocky films, and he'd be like, this is a great story. Look how the underdog always wins, and it was quite a nice. We
Yeah.
went to Philadelphia and got those moments of being
Oh,
like,
wow.
this is special. He's 88 now, but we also watched the Police Academy films, and my mom was always a bit like, "Is he a bit young for this? Like some of these jokes are a bit wrong." And like, but your character genuinely would be laugh out loud funny and just so crazy and out there. And even the other day, I said, "I'm going to get to interview Bobcat," and he couldn't believe it. Like he couldn't believe that I'm actually going to get to
Oh,
interview that guy we watched on TV.
that's really sweet. That's
And
really sweet.
it's amazing, and it's took till now to be able to tell that story because I've never had that moment. But I wondered in that moment when you were doing those films, I've had Steve Guttenberg on as well.
Yeah.
I wondered if you ever had any expectation of just how successful and iconic they'd become, because not many franchises get seven
No,
films and still
no,
today get like classed as some of the best
I didn't.
comedies ever.
No, I had no idea I'd be talking about them 35 years later, or maybe more. Um, I think, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this. One of the things, because I usually make jokes about them and stuff, but one of the things I am really grateful about those movies was, the director was Jerry Paris, not of the first one, but of the second
Yeah.
and third one I did. And Jerry, was really, really old school. But I was talking to Penny Marshall about Jerry, and Jerry was the person Penny watched direct, and the same person Rob Reiner watched, and the same person that Ron Howard watched.
Wow.
That's crazy. And so he was gruff and he was, uh, difficult, but there's so many lessons that he taught me while I was there that actually do they exist. They work. There's a reason for them, and so I had to eat a little crow and go, oh, I learned this from Jerry.
That's amazing about Penny Marshall because Big is truly one of my favorite films of all time. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought the fact that people don't realize that she directed that is just, it's unbelievable.
Oh, Penning was a great director. The funny thing was like I was making a snide joke about Jerry, and then she came to his defense. Goes, well, he taught this, she listed all the people he taught to direct. And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. If I ever run into Ron Howard, I would love to talk to him about Jerry. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. And I wondered at what point you got that itch to kind of switch and go behind the camera. Was there certain films you were watching or directors that you respected that made you think, I want to go at this? Like I'm great in front of the camera. I've had great fun. I've been in some absolute unbelievable films and acting roles, but I actually
No,
want to try and be a bit
it was
technical.
it was the other side of it. It was being in a movie, that wasn't very good and going, well, I think it's time for me to start directing.
I was not expecting something to have to be shit to make you go, I can do this better.
Yeah, that's really what happened. That's really what happened. And then right after that movie, I spent my own money and made my first short, and after that, I was off to the races. Yeah.
I know it's a crazy question, but after kind of looking back now in the time you've had, do you prefer to be in front of the camera or now behind it?
Oh, behind it,
Really, yeah.
especially if it's a story that I wrote, definitely. But I do a lot of other directing, and like I direct a lot of people's comedy specials and stuff. So if I can make somebody feel relaxed and make them be able to do their best job that night or nights we record, that makes me really happy, to cut out all the stress and to facilitate, Um, I directed the Jimmy Kimmel talk show for three
Yeah,
years.
that's amazing.
And that's a different beast, especially when I was doing it, it was live with a little bit of a delay. But um, yeah, I like it when I get a chance to present my friends in a good light. But I really, really enjoy it when I take one of my screenplays and we make it into a movie. Yeah, that's really fun. I wrote a screenplay, and um, there's a part that it would make sense for me to play.
Yeah.
And I actually went as so far as to dress myself in the character and do some of the stuff. And I looked at it and I said, "Nope, you better you can get a better actor."
That must be really tough though, because if you're so passionate about it, like it must be so hard to say to yourself, I'm denying myself this opportunity. Like you got to be quite
Yeah, but
strict on yourself.
it's different though because I'm like, "Oh, if I could get such and such, it'd be amazing in this role."
Yeah.
So to quote Clint Eastwood, a man's got to know his limitations, So yeah, there's not too many roles I think I would go back for, but
You
never
talk
say never.
never say never, no. And I suppose you talked about kind of doing that short and getting out there and directing yourself because you've been around someone that wasn't great and it gave you that inspiration to become a director. But was there a moment in your career that you thought you needed to prove yourself because you were in front of the camera? I look at actors that have gone into directors like Ben Affleck and people, and I feel like there's like a slight tougher kind of road ahead of them because they have to prove themselves because they like, oh, you're an actor, you can't do anything else. I feel
Yeah,
like people
yeah,
think,
yeah,
oh, you
yeah.
can only do one thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think the fact that I've made 8 movies and then I had an anthology series is like, well, I'm not too concerned what people think anyways, but it's like, this is what I love doing. This is what I want to do. As far as I'm sure people like the first movie I got in a Sundance, I'm sure people were rolling their eyes pretty heavy when the movie came in and they were going, "Hey, the dude from Police Academy made a movie." I mean, I'm sure they were rolling their eyes, but then they watched it and had me in. So it's funny you bring up Ben because I think he's a great director. I really think,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
yeah, I think he's a really great director. Um, I guess, I don't have that kind of fame, so I do feel that he's probably wrestling against it. I'm sure there's millions of fans of his that don't even know he's a director.
No, it's fair comment, and I do think there's sometimes a lot of pressure. I had Alex Winter on, and we talked about making documentaries, and we got really deep into the fact that I do sometimes feel people think you should only be successful in one area, and then you
Yeah,
announce you're doing a comedy tour, or you announce you're a musician. Bands that suddenly become directors, or directors that turn into actors that then become a musician. People just think, no, no, you can only have one skill,
yeah.
and I think it's
Well, I
weird.
think this happens to me often, or it did probably probably years ago, but it still happens every once in a while. People think I got famous and then decided, oh, I'm gonna cash in and become a comedian. Do you know what I mean? So often the staff or the management or someone will say, "Oh, you have an act," they're like, oh, they're funny, like they're surprised because they will bring in people who are just famous for being famous,
Yeah.
and they don't really have an act. The whole evening is Q&As and things like that. It's funny you bring up Alex. He's my buddy. I've worked on the movie he did with Tom Stern, Freaked, but
Yeah.
the three of us have always been uh, interwoven in different projects and stuff.
He blows my mind, and his documentaries that we've talked about on the podcast are so incredible, so
Yeah.
insightful, and he's just born to make incredible documentaries. It's such a
But
talent.
I feel like he's making or made a narrative recently, which
Mm,
I was like, good for you. Yeah. So he's yeah, he's a super talented guy. And then him and Keanu are doing Waiting for Godot in the fall,
that's going to be insane.
which I saw that with Robin Williams and Steve Martin. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it was pretty great. And yeah, all right. So
So, I mean, they're going to be going at me at some point saying, you need to talk about God Bless America. Like, if I don't, they're going to shoot me and be like, we gave you time with him and you never mentioned it. But genuinely, I think it's an absolutely amazing film that when
thanks.
I try and describe it to someone, and I say this with full respect, I say it's a bit like, have you seen the film Super?
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Uh,
so Rainn Wilson's Super is so good, but I believe try and say to people, it's a bit like Super, but it's darker, and it's a bit like Natural Born Killers, but lighter. And I try and describe to people a tone.
yeah, I would say tonally, probably a little bit like Natural Born Killers, because I see that as as heightened reality,
Yeah,
and I would say that, almost. I don't the world that Frank and Roxy are in doesn't exist, but it kind of does. I don't know, but I've always it's interesting. I didn't see Super until the trailer for God Bless America came out, and people would write, "I like this movie better when it was called Super." Now, I believe it's definitely Frank. Rain plays Frank, and I think she might be playing Roxy. So if I was going to steal a movie, I probably would at least change the names.
yeah,
But I think it's funny because trolls were trying to start like a beef uh, between James Gunn and I, which is really funny because James is like, I didn't know him, but we started talking because I've seen your movie. It's nothing like my movie. And then he and I became friends. So it's pretty funny. Trolls seem to try to take down him, and then every time they lose, it's like,
yeah. It's really funny, isn't it? Because you try and tell people about something and kind of influence them. And I even say there's elements of Mike Judge's Office Space. It's got that kind of feel, that kind of
yeah,
that warmth. But I don't know. I adore this film, and I'm really glad that more people,
thanks.
because of these. And it's funny, isn't it? The world, like, there's no time scale on a film, so people will discover it even though it can be so many years old. And I love the fact that 2011 it came out, and now we're 14 years later, and more people will now start discovering this.
Yeah, um and it kind of obviously kind of pertains to what's going on now.
Yeah,
So um that's part of people discovering it. When I'm ego surfing, or not even ego surfing, people actually tag me in a lot. They take a lot of Frank's speeches and they make clips out of it for, TikTok and Instagram and things like that. So it's I'm glad it's getting this digital release, and and it's nice that it's finding an audience. But I have to say that's happened to me a time, over and over. Like Shakes the Clown is definitely could be on a double bill with Bad Santa, but
yeah,
Shakes the Clown was, years before, and these movies just come out and then they find their audience, and the people that find them tend to be excited by them and passionate. But it's funny to me when they go see another one of my movies and they don't like it at all. Like they watch the Willow Creek and they go, hey, where's the satire? So I just what makes me pull the trigger on making a movie is me asking myself, can I do it? The challenge. Can I make a suspenseful movie? That's why I did Willow Creek, can I do a movie like Sleeping Dogs Lie and still have you rooting for the protagonist at the end? It's always the challenge. So yeah, so Frank and Roxy, I think the challenge there, I don't know what the challenge was. That's interesting. I just kind of had to make this movie because I was really wondering where was America going.
Yeah. Isn't it frightening that now we're thinking about that more than we've ever thought about it?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's part of why I moved to Ireland.
Yeah.
So um yeah, it's just so strange. Like I owe all these people an apology, like Frank Zappa and Barry Crimmins and George Carlin, because they were all warning us about fascism, and I'd be like, you guys are getting a little too crazy, but they were right. They were all right.
They're all just so ahead of the time. And I even
Yeah,
watch Bill Hicks now and stuff. I'm like, oh man, like he was telling the whole world and we were all just
yeah,
laughing
yeah.
with him.
Yeah, and I just and Bill too. I just felt okay. I agree with what you're saying, but you're getting a little paranoid.
Yeah,
We
just
have
be more funny.
yeah, we have a system of checks and balances, and it's like nope, they were right. Yeah,
So, how's the future looking? I've seen that you've announced some tour dates. So you're obviously doing your
yeah.
stand
I'm in
up.
I'm in the States doing tour. Um, I have two screenplays that I'm out trying to get going. Um, I know me. I know that I will make a movie, if it ends up being me shooting it on an iPhone,
Yeah.
because I love making movies and I love telling stories. But, I may end up working over there, which would be great. I wrote a movie for my wife, Pollyanna McIntosh, so I would love to go make that movie. So,
Oh, tell me more about this.
oh, it's well. What genre would you say? It's kind of there's a lot of twists in it, so it's kind of more of a whodunit in a weird way, or kind of. I guess I would say it's kind of like uh, the player and Misery,
Oh
you
my
know.
God.
So it's kind of it's in the business, but it's really messed up. So I don't go, boy, you did it again. This is messed up. I just finished it, and my friends went, wow, this is messed up.
I feel like you're at this point now where you've earned your stripes, so you can not worry about what you write and you're not trying to please a certain audience. You can do what you want. So as crazy as the ideas come to you, you don't think, oh, I need to actually tone this down or I might
No,
need to make this commercial. You're able to just do what you want.
yeah, I just make them, and that's something that always made me laugh when I would get a bad review, because it would be like, yeah, you could be right, but I'm still going to keep making movies. There's going to be another one. So I just want to make movies till I drop dead.
Is there still a certain film that you would feel that is left on your kind of tick list for life? Like I speak to some directors who are always like, if I had the budget, I would do this, or there's always this idea, but I can never make it happen because of
Right.
this obstacle. But is there something in your heart that you're like, I want to do this before I die?
Well, there's so many movies that I genres that I have ideas for that I eventually want to get to. So I kind of hope I don't get to make all of them because there's so many. You know what I mean? It's never ending. I want to do a war picture. I want to do a musical. I want to do, I want to do, I just want to make all kinds of movies.
I'd love to see more kind of really dark horror, just
Yeah,
twisted, fucked up stuff, especially when the world now is because of these huge franchises that are kind of making a resurgence, and there's brand new movies that are coming out, and they're really kind of making a name for themselves, like Terrifier. If you told someone 10 years ago that Terrifier would make millions and millions of pounds with this sick idea, it
yeah.
just seems so absurd. But having the director on and the cast, it's like the time now to never worry
Yeah,
about your ideas. Anything can happen.
that was really refreshing when and it's the third one.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's that's even better. Yeah, I was really happy when that hit. Um, yeah, it's funny, the one that I wrote for Pollyanna, it was like I think there was people who, Willow Creek is a suspense movie. It's a suspenseful film. It doesn't. So if you're watching it for gore and monsters, it doesn't deliver. But the one I wrote for Polly is definitely it delivers on the gore and a lot of mayhem.
Because of some of the guests I've had on this podcast, people like Neil Blomkamp, Neil Marshall, film directors like Kevin Smith, I always am inspired by film directors. I think it takes so much work, effort, and kind of passion and time to even get that film greenlit, never mind make it. And I have so much respect for all film directors like yourself, but there are a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are trying to get into the industry, that are trying to go to college or film school.
Right.
And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but is there any advice that you'd give to those listeners? Because they always tweet or
Well,
Instagram me and say,
well,
"Oh, I found that so inspiring when you asked Alex Winter what you do to get to become a filmmaker."
Well, one of the things I remember Terry Gilliam saying this, if you're in film school, to study other things besides filmmaking, because if not, you're just going to make films. That's why he's got a big emphasis on studying art.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't hurt to be well-rounded, and it's a cliche, but to be making stuff, is the big key, to make stuff. Also, if you ever get on a set, that's the best time to see what all the jobs are and learn what everybody's doing. And people say, well, easy for you. You could get on a set, but there is jobs, there is to become a PA. I would say if someone wants to be a director, try to get a job as a PA, because then you're going to learn what goes on to make a movie, you
Yeah.
know.
I've been
Um,
lucky enough to be like a runner on set and,
yeah,
doing interviews, and then suddenly you're on set and you're thinking, oh my God, like there's so many parts to this, and nobody
this
understands just what the energy's like, and the demand and the stress that can be caused in just a normal 12-hour day.
well, I remember it was funny. I did two things that Richard Donner directed, and when I was doing the second one, he goes, "Kid, I hear you want to direct." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Come to my trailer," and I go, "Wow, I'm gonna get some advice from Dick." He throws a pillow at me. He goes, "Take a lot of naps." And so
That's amazing.
I took a nap in this trailer with Dick Down. But what was funny was before he passed away, I ran into him and I told him that story, and he goes, "It's true." And I go, "Dick, I've never been on a set that I could take a nap." It's like when Joel Murray did God Bless America. He called Bill to ask his brother Bill Murray, ask him what's it like to be number one on a call sheet. What do you do to carry a film? He asked him for advice, and like 3 weeks later, Bill finally called him back, and he starts telling him what to do, and Joel goes, "No, I gotta stop you. This is a Bobcat Goldthwait movie. We already shot it."
It's done.
He goes, "We shot it in 16 days. It's already done." Yeah.
Bill's been napping for 3 weeks. He's doing the best
Yeah, yeah,
advice.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. He goes, "No, this is a Bobcat movie. It's already in the can."
I love it. And is there a dream actor you'd love to work with? Is there someone that would be the perfect icing on the cake for you? I know you probably get asked what genres you
No,
want to make and stuff, but is there someone you're like, I want to
I mean,
work with them?
I don't want. I mean, there's actors that I'm always just, like Gary Oldman or someone, that I'm just
Wow.
amazed at. But I couldn't imagine him. Well, maybe he would, because when I love him in interviews, he's very silly. He goofs around. Like when he
Yeah,
comes to the talk show, he's usually dancing and stuff. So, he's a big one. I don't know. There's a lot of people that I just love, but I don't, when I'm writing the screenplay, I don't imagine like, oh yeah, and then I'll get Olivia Colman. I usually write it with my friends in mind. And, in the case of Robin being in World's Greatest Dad, Robin thought he was going to play like the principal and help me get the movie made. So he read the script and he called me up and he says, can I play, the guy? And I was like, wow. So that's a case of like having a big name in one of my movies, but just happened that Robin was a really good friend and he was doing me a solid. But most of the time I'm writing it with the different friends in mind to play the parts.
that's awesome. And I suppose, is there anything left apart from directing? Obviously, you've done the acting, you've done the directing. I speak to people that wanted to get into photography. You do stand-up comedian, comedy on tour. Is there anything else? Is there an album in you? Is there a book of
No, I
your
would like to.
journals or?
I I started to scribble and make notes and have written some about an autobiography, but I would say work-wise, I really, and it's interesting because I believe he's doing it right now. Quentin Tarantino's writing a play, I think, and I would love to pull off a play, to rivet people in a theater. That would be really exciting. That's a challenge, yeah.
But I can see it. That's the truth. I can see your name on it.
Well, I'd love to do it. It'd be really fun.
If
Yeah.
someone's listening right now, they can reach out to you. Let's make it happen. I'll just take 10%. That's fair.
Yeah, yeah, get a taste.
What I do on this podcast, I'm conscious of time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could talk to you for hours, but what I do on this podcast, that every guest has been asked the same final question. And I know you love music. And what I do to make this really personal is every guest that's been on gets to choose a song that's played at the very end. So every single episode of Mark and Me is different because the guest has chosen a song that means a lot to them. So once I've edited today's interview and it goes out
Uh,
there, what would you
I would
love to be
say,
played?
I would say, Ricky Nelson's Garden Party. You know,
Wow.
because he has a line in there. He says, "If memories is all I sell, I'd rather drive a truck." And I'm always moving forward. I don't. I mean, it's nice when people like the stuff I've made and things, but I'm not too. I'm just not. I'm not nostalgic. I'm always trying to make the next thing.
I'm the opposite. I'm a nightmare. That's why my podcast is about a bloody tiny little alien that's trying to be fed McDonald's and drink Coke.
Well, I'm promoting a movie that's 14 years old, so I better be
Yeah,
able
so it's
to
okay.
help them.
One final moment. I've never normally asked this directors, but I just feel like there's something in me wanting to ask it. But do you ever read your reviews or comments, or do you try and avoid it? Because I speak to a lot of people that kind of do an acting role or directing of a film and just switch off. They don't want to then see what people say because that one comment or a cruel troll comment might destroy all the hard work. And I wondered if you rise above it and just switch off, or do you take feedback and read those comments?
Um, I, I I think if you're on social media, there's no way you're not reading it. So comments I try not to get too hung up on. Uh, um, and so many times when someone's writing something negative, I look back and it's a bot. So
Yeah.
that's kind of crazy. It is time not spent well. But reviews, when the movie first comes out, I do look at reviews because I'm hoping we get a couple good reviews so we can put it on the advertising and the
Yeah.
poster, the trailer. Um, After that, I don't actually, like later on, I'm like really surprised when someone says, "Oh, you've got a lot of nice reviews on whatever for that movie on Amazon." I'll go, "What?" But um, they can hurt,
Yeah.
and I do. The times I swear off of social media is so productive. I mean, not just it prevents my head from going to a really dark place. I'm just so much more productive when I'm not looking at social media.
It's a vicious one, isn't it? Because here in the UK, we've just had like 2 weeks off for Easter, and my wife's not been at work, and I've just had this like message come on my phone today that tells me about my screen time, and it was like, you're 53% more active last week, and I just thought to myself, oh, that's the most depressing thing in the world. Like, I
Yeah.
hate that my phone's got me so much and so like I'm so trapped by it. And it took my
Yeah.
wife being off and having a family adventure to put it down. And I'm like, it's
Yeah.
an addiction.
It's just totally addiction. And my wife likes to do things like go walk on the beach.
Yeah.
She goes swimming and all year long in the sea. That's crazy. I jumped in on New Year's, but she jumps in a few times a week. Yeah, she's much better at staying away from social media. Unfortunately, me doing stand up, I do, the venues will say, "Hey, you didn't promote," so I am asked to promote on social media, but um, it's just a really weird thing. I do notice, like sometimes when I'm looking for someone and they don't have a social media presence, I usually admire them. I usually go,
I
"Oh,
think, wow.
yeah." I go, "Wow, I didn't. I was just looking at an actor and they didn't have a social media thing." Uh, and
Imagine that life. It must be amazing.
yeah,
They must
yeah.
get so much done. They must have 10 films out in a couple of years.
I know, I know. And then there's things like what's problem is the positives get you hooked back in. Like we were
Yeah.
talking about James Gunn. I would never become James and I are good buddies, and I love being around him and stuff. And if it wasn't for social media, we would have never found each other. So it's weird.
If you ever want to tell James Gunn to come on the podcast, that would be awesome. What a
I,
dude he is. What a great guy.
I'll ask him how much he likes Mac and me.
And if he loves it, then we could spend half an hour. You can come on as well. We'll have a free way of chatting all about the love of the alien.
Oh, I should also make it clear that the woman I dated that's in that dance scene is not Jennifer Aniston.
I was going to say, there's going to be people
It's-
Instagram and tweeting me saying, oh my God, I didn't know that Bobcat dated Jennifer. And I was like, oh my God, I don't need that story tweeted and trending.
no, it's not. But
But
I
there's a story there. They must have known her. They must have been rehearsing with her.
yeah. Oh, they did. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so
Uh,
much for your time, sir. It's been
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure to have you on. And genuinely, I really hope we get some UK dates eventually of your stand-up or some
Oh
comedy
yeah,
nights. That would
that
be
that
unreal.
that will definitely happen. I'm already. I know I'm going to start. So yeah.
And I say it because I've had Alex Winter on this podcast 4 times. I've had Neil Blomkamp on 3 times, Kevin Smith twice. If you ever want to come back on, it would be an absolute dream to spend longer and dive deeper because I really appreciate the press tours and getting you on is a dream. I've waited 8 years. But if you ever
well,
want to come back on and just to talk about anything you want, I would love that.
thank you. Thanks so much, man. Thanks
I
for
really
having me on. Thank you. You
take
too.
care. So there it is. There's my interview with me and Bobcat Goldthwait. My God, how cool is he? Just an absolute legend. An amazing comedian, an amazing director, an amazing actor. I just love the guy. And I had really high hopes when I went into this interview with kind of expectations of please be good. Please be a great guest. Don't, I remember someone saying never meet your heroes. but he was everything and more I could have ever wished for. So I'm so grateful for Bobcat for coming on the podcast. I really hope one day, I'm being greedy, but we can do another podcast, because it was amazing to have 45 minutes with you. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface and there's so much more to say. Also, I want to say that if you're listening right now and you've enjoyed today's interview, please take the time to share it. It costs you guys nothing to do. There's loads of people out there that know of Bobcat, will love seeing his picture in the podcast artwork and thinking, oh my God, I remember him. I want to go and listen to this. And all that requires from you is to basically share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever sites you use, or just tell someone you work with or a friend. Please go and listen to Mark and me. They might just do that, and before you know it, I've got a new subscriber and a listener every week, and all it took was you to click a couple of buttons or just tell a friend. Like I said on today's interview at the start, we were talking all about God Bless America, which is available now to stream on Studio Canal Presents. And also, before I go, I want to give a big shout out to the sponsors of Mark and me. Firstly, Vice Press News. If you guys out there want to get a print or a poster that is completely licensed from the best artists in the world, go on vicepress.com and use the discount code MarkandMe10. Also, Richer Sounds, if you want to get yourself anything to do with audio and visual, go and visit any of their high street stores or go on their site, richersounds.com. You won't be disappointed and there will be any price out there. Right, before I go, I want to say that if you've enjoyed today's episode and want to go that little bit further, I do have a Patreon account. The link's on markandme.com, and I use all the money that comes in from Patreon to go right back into the podcast, which allows me to record more interviews for you guys at home. Right, all I'm going to do now is say thanks again for listening. Please continue to share this podcast. Thanks again to Bobcat for coming on and sharing the love for Mac and me. And I'll leave you all now and be back in a couple of days with a brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
I went to a garden party to reminisce with my old friends, a chance to share old memories, play songs again. When I got to the garden party, they all knew my name. No one recognized me. I didn't look the same, but it's alright now. I learned my lesson well. You see, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. People came from miles around, everyone was there. Yoko brought a walrus, there was magic in the air. Over in the corner, much to my surprise, Mr. Hughes hid Dylan's shoes, wearing his disguise. But it's alright now, I learned my lesson well. You see, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La da da, la da da da. Played them all the old songs, I thought that's why they came. No one heard the music, didn't look the same. I said hello to Mary Lou, she belongs to me. When we sang a song about a honky-tonk, it was time to leave. But it's alright now, I learned my lesson well. See, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La da da, la da da da. Someone opened up the closet door, and out stepped Johnny B. Good, playing guitar like a ringing a bell, and looking like you should. Now if you gotta play a garden party, I wish you a lot of luck. But if memories were all I sang, I'd rather drive a truck. And it's alright now, I've learned my lesson well. See, you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. La da da, la da da, la da da da. And it's alright now, yeah, I learned my lesson well. See, you